Mm. Greetings. All right. Straight into it. No bullshit. Um, we completed chapter 2. There is a solution in the text, the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And now I'm reading more about alcoholism, which is chapter 3. Most of us have been okay. Right. If you've ever been to a meeting, more than 5 meetings in your life, you've heard this. All right. Um, More about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. Okay. So think about that. People with peanut allergies are not sitting around obsessing about the day that they can eat peanuts safely. You know, they may go, "Oh man, I really wish I could enjoy peanut butter. Like everybody looks to be enjoying it so much. Or Reese's peanut butter cups. Oh God, I wish." But I don't think they sit around and obsess over it and do go to such extreme measures to try to prove that they can consume that substance safely, that it destroys their lives. So what is it about alcohol and alcoholics that we pursue that delusion into the gates of insanity or death? Interesting. I don't know, right? Maybe because the is the drunk like high that good? What is it? You know, like compared to other things, it's not even like the best intoxication. There are other things out there that give you more it's better, right? Not to say it's good, but if we were going to compare like drunk with something else, it's not even the best one. So why do we pursue it to the gates of insanity or death? I don't know. Because we have a mental obsession that is beyond our mental control. Okay. We have this craving that's beyond our mental control, an obsession to prove that we can drink like regular people. Why? You know, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. So you have to be fully convinced personally, you. Doesn't matter what you say to anybody else or what anybody else says to you. In the quietest regions of your mind, in the most private pockets of your consciousness, you would need to have fully accepted that you're an alcoholic and you cannot drink safely ever, right? Just for today, obviously. So it's interesting, like we talk about like drunk dreams or using dreams, and in the dream, sometimes, we would drink or we would use. In my dreams from early in recovery, if I would drink or use, in the dream, I would go, oh shit. Now I gotta like pick up a white chip or fuck, now I gotta call my sponsor and what am I gonna tell my mom? That was my inside of my dreams. I didn't even get to enjoy drinking in my dreams anymore, you know? Because in the dream I would go, oh shit, what am I gonna tell all my friends who are sober? What am I gonna tell my mom? You know? What am I going to say to my sponsor? In a dream. I didn't even get to enjoy it in a dream. So the way I took that is like my innermost self, even my unconscious dream brain, my sleeping dream brain was in recovery just on some level. Okay. The delusion that we're like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us have felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. So, like, it's been 18 years for me. And imagine that I went out tonight with my wife and we got dinner and I had a beer. And maybe I stopped at one beer and I was like, wow, okay, I'm okay, I think, right? And a couple weeks goes by and then we're out again and I have a beer. And I go, you know what? I can have two this time. So I have two. And then maybe a couple months goes by and I go, well, the two that I had, that worked out great. So let me get whatever, some whiskey drink. So I get a whiskey drink and that's what, you know what I mean? See how it, and then before I know it, in some period of time, I believe I'd be back to, because see how my thinking just then, it was never just a beer, then a beer, then a beer, then a beer, then a beer. It's like a beer, then two beers, then whiskey, right? And what that would be is that would be the interval where I thought I was regaining control. Such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. So I don't necessarily think that I would drink today and then just like be destroyed tomorrow. But I do believe that even if I was convincing myself that I could control it for a little bit of time, inevitably I would return to the way I always drank from the first drink I ever took. Okay, so that's what's important about when we think about our own, when you think about your life, how long was it before your drinking or using or behavior was debatable, arguably a little bit out of control? How long did it take? Maybe it took you 10 years. Maybe it took 15 years for you. Maybe it took a semester at college, like whatever it was, just look at it and be honest with yourself. Okay, how long was it before like I really kind of started to get out of control? Cuz like I'll tell you right now, my wife can drink one half of a beer and not even ever think about it ever again. And I go, "Are you going to finish that?" And she goes, "No, it's warm." I'm like, "I'll drink beer that's been in a garage in the summertime for 4 months, warm, you know? What are you talking about? I'll drink some dusty bottle of whiskey I found under my parents' kitchen cabinet that had been there for 15 years that tasted disgusting, but that was my first drink, right? So it's like, we have to be honest with ourselves and think about, because here's the other thing, right? We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. Now, does that mean only if I'm drinking I get worse? Or does it mean that 18 years has elapsed since me and my last drink? And what if my alcoholism has continued to progress with me over those 18 years, even though I haven't been drinking? So when I do, if I were to pick up a drink today, 18 years later, I would like, on some level, not pick up where I left off, but pick up where I would have been had I kept drinking for 18 years, which I believe that's dead. Okay. That's what I believe because I was already having seizures and stuff. Okay. So we are convinced to a man. So such intervals usually brief. So maybe I could have a beer tonight and not really, maybe I could like make myself not think about it too much. And maybe I could act normal and convince my wife and all my friends, see, look, maybe I overreacted all those years ago because it doesn't, it appears that I'm fine. Weeks go by, I have another beer. Weeks go by, I have two beers. Weeks go by, I have a whiskey. Weeks go by. But within how long would it eventually snowball on me? If ever, I don't know. It's not worth the risk for me to find out, to be honest. It's not that important to me to take that risk, you know? And then where would I pick up? Would I pick up where I left off, which was bad? Or would I pick up where I would have been had I kept drinking over the past 18 years? I don't know. I haven't tried. I haven't run the experiment, so I don't know. And it's not worth it for me to find out. Okay. But if you're new and you're considering if you're an alcoholic, just think about how you drank over the last year of your life. And what was the thinking like? What was the private conversation like, God, I can't wait to get home. It's 4 o'clock at work, and you're like, fuck, I cannot wait. Like, who else lives their life like that? You know? Or when you're having a couple beers at dinner, you're like, can't wait to get home so I can tie this ribbon on nice, because I can't do it here with all these people, make a fool of myself. I got to go home and do it in privacy. How did you drink? Just be honest with yourself. We are like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Okay. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they are in that class, despite everything, right? Many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they are in that class of people. They're not going to believe they're an alcoholic. By every form of self deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non alcoholic. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard and long enough to drink like other people. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Okay, right? And then it's going to like tell you. All right. Drinking beer only. Limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums. So that would be like treatment centers or, a retreat or something like that. Accepting voluntary commitment to asylums or, in today's world, a treatment center or detox. We could increase the list ad infinitum, meaning forever. Okay. We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Here's an important part that's coming up. So, and I love that. We do not pronounce any individual as alcoholic, right? So I may know, right, that you're an alcoholic, but I can't tell you you're an alcoholic. You have to be convinced. And you could have, oh, I can see it plain as day from a mile away, right? But if you don't diagnose yourself, it's pointless. Okay. So here's the trick. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. All right, that's the great part about AA. These guys is they're saying, "Hey, man, if you don't think you're an alcoholic, go drink. But drink and control it. Stop abruptly, you know? Do that more than one time, actually, and see. It will not take long for you to decide if you are honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. So here's the trick with here's the little sidebar with that. It's because I worked in a treatment facility for a number of years, detox first, and then a treatment facility. And I got to work one on one with a lot of people over those years. And I had, a nice mix, mostly actually people who were addicted to drugs, primarily opiates. That was a big one. Okay. And they would go to an AA meeting and they would hear that. And they would go, well, I got to try some controlled heroin use and then just stop abruptly to prove that I'm a regular heroin user. It doesn't work like that, guy. I just got to try to smoke crack like a gentleman. Well, I mean, if you can do that, then that's amazing. You're that professor guy from fucking Columbia or wherever he's from. So I would warn them when they would go to a meeting or they would hear this read in a group or something. I would go, just remember, man, that like this is talking about drinking, okay? Where potency and all that is like heavily scientifically controlled and precise. If you get a beer, you know exactly what's in it every single time. A baggie from dude on the block could have nowadays especially it's like anything could have anything in it and you could be dead, right? So this advice doesn't really transition over to other fellowships, right? Because the risk is way higher. The variables are too great. If you're not sure if you're an alcoholic, then yeah, try some controlled drinking, like have a couple beers, and then monitor yourself. Am I obsessing about it? Am I really like craving more? What's going on with me? Can I drink and stop abruptly? And they say that try that more than once because it won't take you long if you're an alcoholic to get real with yourself at that point and say, okay, maybe I am this thing. Though there is no way of proving it, we believe that early in our drinking careers, most of us could have stopped drinking early on. But the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. We have heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period of time because of an overpowering desire to do so. And here is one. And this is where I get that anecdotal idea that the alcoholism progresses along with us, even if we're not drinking. So, like, would I pick up where I left off or would I pick up where I would have been? This story illustrates that very well. But if you look back, like I look back at like college years, my late teens, early 20s, and I think like there were times that I did stop, because something was important enough that I realized like I had to have my shit together. And so I could put it down and I could stop for a period of time. And then I would be really proud of myself and I would think, wow, look at me. I don't have a problem after all. And then soon enough, for me, by 22 years old, I was like completely off the rails. So, you know, um, but there are some, so there, I look back and there were times I could have changed it, but I think around 20 is when I crossed that invisible line. 2021. And I had other addictions too at a younger age, So my late teens was other addictions, because of where I was and what was available. There were other things that were more easily available to me than alcohol, you know. But once I hit 19, 20, 21, and I was in a city and I had a fake ID and I could access alcohol whenever I wanted, as long as I had money. Okay, and the other things that at one time were easily accessible, it was way more dangerous to get those. So I could like walk into a liquor store and get what I needed versus going to, a very dangerous place by myself, Um, so I just switched from back to drinking around 19 and then just hit that hard. I was like, that's my thing, right? I'm going to drink every day, all day, every day. So here's a story of a guy, right? A man of 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was very nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he would get nowhere if he drank at all. Once he started, he had no control whatever. He made up his mind that until he had been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. Then he fell victim to the belief which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers and a bottle. In 2 months, he was in a hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several trips to the hospital meantime. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether and found he could not. Every means of solving his problem, which money could buy, was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces and was dead within 4 years. So he didn't drink for 25 years, had a very successful career, started drinking, dead in 4 years. So that's what I mean. Is it progressing with me even though I'm not drinking? This story convinces me that it is. This case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us have believed that if we remained sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. But here is a man who, at 55 years, found he was just where he had left off at 30. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can stop, as he did, on their own willpower. We doubt if many of them can do it because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them, because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who had been drinking 20 years. And when I read that for the first time, probably at 22 or 23 years old, I was so relieved, because then there's an expression, old timers would say, I spilled more alcohol than you ever drank, right? Which is shut up, basically, shut up. Who cares? That's what this book is saying, you know? Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who had been drinking for 20. So it just took you guys longer to get as fucked up as I got in a shorter period of time. Who's cooler now, bitch? Took you all that time. You know what I mean? I'm just kidding. But however you want to look at it, doesn't matter. If you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. And if life sucks going on the way that we're going on, then let's change it. Right? It doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter how poor you are. It doesn't matter, right? If you want to change your life around, this book is telling you how to do it. To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantities that some of us have. Okay, thanks, Bill, and the first 100 for saying that. This is particularly true of women, it says. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We who are familiar with the symptoms see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere, but try and get them to see it. And then it has an asterisk there. So True in this book was first published, but in 2011, US and Canada membership surveys showed about 1/12 of AAs were 30 and under. Wow. So a lot of younger people have found the program and taken to the program and spared themselves 20, 30 years of hell. Okay. As we look back, we feel we had gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could quit on our willpower. If anyone questions whether he has entered this dangerous area, let him try leaving liquor alone for 1 year. So here's another experiment or another test to try, if you're not sure, is it says try leaving liquor alone for 1 year. If he is a real alcoholic and very far advanced, there is scant chance of success. So very little chance of success. In the early days of our drinking, we occasionally remained sober for a year or more, becoming serious drinkers again later. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period, you may yet be a potential alcoholic. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry anything like a year. Some will be drunk the day after making their resolutions, most of them within a few weeks. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Okay, so if you're reading this book, or if you're listening to me read this book, we're assuming that you have a desire to stop drinking. Whether such a person can quit upon a non spiritual basis depends on the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. So it's saying whether such a person can quit upon non spiritual. So again, it's hinting like, hey, all this other shit we're going to do is like, it's a spiritual program of action. Okay. So just to remind you again, right? Spiritual program of action. That's what it is. Okay. And if you can quit without the spiritual program of action, good. But it's saying that depends on the extent to which you have already lost the power to choose whether or not you drink, right? So if you have lost the power to choose whether or not you drink, you probably need a spiritual solution. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. So, like integrity, honest, moral, caring, kind. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever. So it's like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be like this. Yet we found it was impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. How then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful, but we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem. Okay. So experiment one is quit cold turkey for 1 year. Okay. Or actually, experiment one is try some controlled drinking. Drink and then abruptly stop, you know? Experiment two is try to quit cold, just stop drinking for 1 year. Okay. And then it's going to go into a couple stories to explain, so they can describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking. For obviously, this is the crux of the problem. So we'll get into that tomorrow because then this goes on for another like 10 pages. And I think, um, and it's good to just kind of go and, do these because it's like one story after another that explains the mental state, right? Like what some examples of how people have justified taking a drink, even though they know that um, even though they know that they can't drink, how they convince themselves to try again, or how they convince themselves that this time it'll be different. Which, if you do the same thing over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity. But what about, how crazy is it to do the same thing over and over and over again, knowing the result sucks and doing it anyway? What is that called? All right. Well, we'll read more tomorrow.